This week, let's go ahead and debunk that myth of being apolitical with the help of Taylor Swift. Next up, this documentary is uncovering a country under the influence of the bought and sold, snorting greed like Keith Richards snorts anything. And speaking of greed, meet the deal breakers and sociopathic moneymakers trying to buy a war with Iran. And finally, some frontlines activism happening this week. But first, come, let's enjoy this. Bread and circus. Everyone please stand and remove your caps for the singing of the national anthem. Everyone please disregards the rights that we've barred, the futures we've scarred, the hope and change marred. Stare at the stars and stripes and sing. Let freedom ring in this ring of bread and circus, this corporately named, beautifully framed distraction. Pay no attention to lurking poor. Pay your respects to the women and men who fought so you can ignore. The man begging for change on your way to the game. Don't look for the reasons. Now that sounds like treason. Sit back and enjoy. Forget the worries that wear. Try this on for size. Close your eyes and see the beautiful lies we've crafted, the smooth, slick facades we've mastered. Pay no mind to the real world outside. All you need is here inside. A battle royale, sanitized, commodified. Buy, sheeple, buy. It's $10 beer night. Bobblehead free with your purchase, made in China. Don't disturb us, we're cheering. Jingoist jeering, fat cats sit leering. Box seats and athletes, stamped with the marks of their maker. Tonight's magic brought to you by Citibank. Like yesterday's crash, so thanks for the cash, please do come back. It's on your backs we do build, through your brains we do drill. This rich man's utopia, sociopath sweet, that carrot on a string that you never will meet. So cozy up to your apathy. Let's slide the vile confines of sanity. There is no place in this space for warrior care. This vapid, bombastic, historically classic, massive distraction has been specially made in a tailor's own way with threads just thin enough so you don't see as they tie around your wrists, sneak past your knees, round your ankles with ease, a puppet to move as they please, strong enough to squeeze to keep you in line, puff up your pride, the war-hawking kind, so anything they do for the red, white, and blue is just fine with you. 'Cause this is a game, and who cares that after the cheers we walk past the same young man begging, the same path to forgetting, paved with the ads that add up to a shrug, and acceptance that this is as good as it gets. Do you believe that? When you stand for the national anthem, when you stretch in the 7th inning, pretzels in hand, happily grinning, do you believe that God blesses America? Do you believe that we are a land of the free? But how could that be? So many enslaved, be it bars and chains or debt-solid cage, we are not free. Eat your bread, watch your circus. Hell, we can all enjoy a day at the ballpark, but check your conviction that we are the greatest. Nothing will change us, no one need save us. 'Cause as our freedoms decay, as the reasons to be proud wither away, so the games will be played, ever more grand in stadiums lavish that our taxes paid, all across this broken land, over schools, over roads, over hospitals, homes. All you'd say that we need more than games has evermore been pushed to the side to make room for this high rise, this church to the bread and the circus, a cathedral of commerce. Democracy's hearse slides down the right field line. The receipt from your sugar and fat reads, fans, remember please, don't be political. Don't try to change what we've made. And remember, enjoy the game. Enjoy the game. Don't be political. Enjoy the game. Enjoy the game. And just as you sit back to fall, to let go of all your fight for what's right, a real better life, remember this: silence is political. It is your frozen stance, eyes closed like in trance, as ball after ball fires by, never you swing, only hope in the din that none of them hit you. What a shitty batter. What a shitty citizen. Swing. From tweets to marching in the streets, this is Act Out. Welcome to Act Out. I'm Eleanor Goldfield, and this is your tipping point. Don't be political. I'm sure you've heard people say that before. Don't be political. It's not sexy to be political. Stop talking politics. Well, it turns out that the people most excited by your frozen stance in that political batter's box are the politicians themselves and their fat cat donors who really want to keep running the game. So seriously, don't be political. This was further highlighted in a recent Fox News report. Well, I say report, but that really suggests that there's news and reporters or journalists involved. So let's just call it what they themselves even admit to. Fucking gossip. Uselessly vapid cover-ups to avoid actually talking about real shit. So in one of those recent segments, these two out-of-touch TMZ hopefuls commented on how excited lawmakers were that Taylor Swift was in town. Naturally, I wondered, what the fuck, and clicked on the link. Instead of trying to explain to you the dog-whistle-like pain associated with hearing some of the words so strikingly stupid emanate from their mouths, I'm just gonna go ahead and show this to you.
It is time to get you in the know, a combination of politics and Hill gossip. Every Monday night, Judy Kurtz from thehill.com joins us to walk us through some of the stories. Judy, good to have you with us.
Great to be here.
All right, let's get to it. We all know it is hard to get anything done in Congress these days because of all that bad blood between Republicans and Democrats. Get it? That's Taylor Swift's song, Bad Blood. Yeah, I know, a little lame. But for the next couple of nights at Taylor's concerts at Nats Ballpark, they are coming together, right?
That's right. This is the one thing that Democrats and Republicans seem to be able to agree on, and that's Taylor Swift. Yeah. They all love Taylor Swift. 26 lawmakers, Democrats and Republicans, are fundraising off of Taylor Swift's concerts here in D.C.
Now, not in the same suite, right? Basically, they get a suite or an allotment of seats, and then they invite people to pay over the ticket price, right?
Right, that's right. Pay much more over the ticket price to see both the lawmaker and get a taste of Taylor Swift's music.
And you know how it works. I guess the more you pay, the more face time you get with the lawmaker, right?
Absolutely. And Taylor Swift seems to be the perfect way to fundraise for these lawmakers because she's not too controversial. She's almost saccharine sweet in many ways. And she's non-political, so each party can kind of claim her as one of their own.
I really hope I never run into either one of these people on the DC Metro because as peaceful as I am, I will just fucking slap them. First of all, how can you sit there like fucking Ken and Barbie, all smiles, and explain to people that, oh yeah, how it works is you pay a lot of money, more than any of you have that are watching this, and then you get to see this lawmaker and talk to him about what you want, and you also get to see some skinny blonde bounce around on stage. How great is that? But even still, we wouldn't even have this horrendous segment to test our gag reflexes on if it weren't for the fact that Taylor Swift is now the equivalent of campaign bait. And yes, that really fucking bothers me as a feminist, but not nearly as much as it bothers me that she's actually worse than apolitical, because that doesn't exist. What she is a loud supporter of the status quo, a complicit accomplice in the fast-falling farce that is this democracy. Simply by being quote-unquote apolitical, to my knowledge, she has never once used her fame for the socio-political benefits of this country, or any other country for that matter. I mean, can you imagine crooked politicians trying this shit with Bob Dylan, or Joan Baez, Immortal Technique, or Rage Against the Machine? Yeah, come on down to the Rage concerts, box seats, and you can get verbally abused while you sip your martini. An unlikely pairing, I think. And that is exactly as it should be. Artists are the mouthpiece of a generation, the voice of a culture, and right now, what are they saying? Oh, don't break my heart, or come on my back, or why didn't you text me back? I think I love you. The fucking world is on fire. The US is killing children and civilians at random, our economy is tanking, our environment's gasping for air, and all you can write about is that some dude stood you up at an overpriced restaurant in New York fucking City. Taylor, you'll never watch this, but I would like to ask this to the ether. Just put it out there. Do you really want your only legacy to be that you helped some teenage boys masturbate and helped some corporate fucksticks raise money to shit on the futures of your little teeny bopper fans? Do you really want to end your life knowing that you never made anyone think? That you only ever made people feel for themselves, their bad days and broken hearts, that any number of starving fucking kids, even in this country, let's not even talk about internationally, any of your bad days that any number of fucking homeless kids would literally offer up a few fingers to have as a best day. Hey, squirrel. I know you're young and you want to have fun, but hey, what about Mari Black, the 20-year-old MP who just last week gave her maiden speech in the House of Commons, a fucking ray of light in the midst of old crotchety white men tinkering with their billions in the shadows while the rest of the UK tightens their belts in attempts to move on? And they actually do really look like that, no joke. And no, we can't be as much of a badass as Mari, but we can all do something. And that something becomes a big fucking deal when you have as many fans as Taylor Swift. Don't be campaign bait. I know you like boys, but these men are using you to drop-kick democracy and shit on freedom. There is no apolitical. Silence is political. Don't be that shitty batter. Moving on slightly, as we're still covering the subject of asshat politicians for sale, last week the documentary film Under the Influence began a fundraising campaign in order to get money to finish and distribute their film. Again, instead of me trying to explain what it's all about, check out their trailer and my interview with filmmakers Dave Hagen and Jennifer Cosentino.
What if America no longer belonged to the American people? What if it was now under corporate control? Has war been waged against us by forces we can't even see? If our democracy is being stolen, how do we take it back?
Big global corporations accountable to no one but the profit motive now run our democracy.
It's a corrupt system. It depends on money. It depends on special interests. They never ask what's good for America.
Moneyed forces wield such disproportionate power to influence governmental functioning compared to that of the average citizen.
About 70% of the population, they have essentially no influence on policy.
From the insurance, banking, oil, gas, coal, drug industry, health insurance industry, you name it, they are in effect corporatizing our entire political economy, and that is called fascism.
This is a conversation about the American people defending our republic against a tyranny.
The tragedy is that it's legal. They're doing it. It's allowed to happen. How is that possible?
Our founding fathers created a system of checks and balances, so no one group, no single interest could dominate our society. Our parents and grandparents fought to preserve that American way.
Every generation is a steward of our democracy. Other generations did what had to be done in order to get American democracy back on track.
Dr. King had no guarantees that his vision was going to come true.
All of us must stand up together.
The suffragettes had no guarantee that the women would ever be able to vote in America. The original environmental movement, there was no guarantee that if they struggled on, they would get the EPA or they would get any of these gains. They all came out of a passionate commitment and belief that no matter what, I am going to continue to speak up.
Campaign finance reform is more than just an item on the legislative agenda. She takes the issue so seriously, she's willing to walk all the way from California to New Hampshire.
I've got 16 great-grandchildren, and I'm damned if I want them to be brought up in a country where a poor man has to sell his soul in order to run for office, or he has to be a multimillionaire. We're losing our democracy and nothing's being done about it.
The United States is a nation where there is an almost genetic attraction to democracy. It's not just a good idea, it's how we're born and created.
We are the change that we've been waiting for. It's not going to happen from up down. It's going to happen from us insisting that it changes.
When you see masses of people rising up and willing to take a stand, it emboldens other people, and then people realize that they have a right and a responsibility to speak out.
Tonight, we're going to start a fight, to take back our democracy,
Who's gonna take on the big
personally, I feel like the time has never been more relevant for this film to come out, especially with the elections and the need for America to wake up to the fact that corporations are pretty much running our government. And the last time I checked, I didn't vote for Georgia Pacific as my president or Monsanto as my president. And I just feel that with the amount of super PACs that are being formed and Citizens United, that it's never been a more perfect time for this film to get the message out.
And I'm also curious, how long did it take you to make the film? And I know that documentaries typically take quite a while. And of course, in this current system, things change daily and weekly and by the month. And so how did your storytelling in this documentary shift with things that happened as you were making the film?
Well, they've been shooting and filming for, I think, going on 4 years now. I think they've been collecting footage and out there in the world interviewing people and traveling around the country meeting, the people who are, both, everyday Americans and, sort of the more academics and celebrities and people who are trying to lend their voice to this conversation. And it does take a while to put all that together. And we're still putting the film together. We're even doing our Indiegogo campaign fundraiser right now.
You bring up stewardship of the American democracy, which is, of course, one of the reasons that we live in a corporatocracy is because the people have fallen back and aren't pushing for their democracy. So why do you feel that has faltered or even failed in this particular generation? Why do you feel that apathy is so rampant?
Well, I think part of it is because, our generation, I don't think we've really had to deal with anything so systemic and socially, culture-wide that really required us to get in there and push and fight and get involved. The closest thing I've seen to that in my time has been the Obama election. But that was the first time I'd really seen, large-scale collective activism really go do something and have like an instant result. Previous generations had their hands full with the civil rights movement, getting the Environmental Protection Agency created in the first place, giving right for women's votes, suffrage, and things like that. So something that Marianne Williamson points out is that every generation has something they have to do to continue the stewardship. And this is ours. This is what we have to do. We have to take back our democracy from the influence of money.
And I also feel like the reason that it has faltered, I feel that there's been so much distraction and disinformation that's been put out there, and when you're bombarded with so much crap, you become numb, you turn off to it, and you feel this general malaise and apathy because how am I going to get through all this information and how am I going to actually figure out what the truth is, and then we become the situation of where you're the frog in the boiling water, And it's almost like until something really bad happens in your own backyard, do you really awaken to the fact that this has actually been going on for a long time?
Yeah, and I think that, there's a lot of disillusionment as well as the disinformation because, like you said, a lot of people were really relieved when Obama was elected. And then, of course, it was more of the same, if not worse, in a lot of cases, like continued warfare and offshore drilling, the environment, drone bombings, whistleblowers. So the whole, hope and change ended up blowing up in our collective faces. And so I think a lot of people wanted to just say fuck it to politics after that, which of course only perpetuates this issue of corporatocracy. So you have a lot of amazing people in the film. And you feature people like Daryl Hannah, for example, who's an environmental activist. And it's interesting because a lot of these, I talk about this a lot on the left, like the left has a problem by focusing on just one singular issue as opposed to following that red thread to, for example, the corrupting influence of money in politics. And do you feel that environmental activists like Daryl Hannah or others that are fighting, for example, maybe for healthcare or things like that, do you feel that there is that strong red thread that exists, or are you trying to draw that connection by having environmental activists and different specific issue activists in the film?
I think that there is a common thread, but I think what we're trying to do is actually highlight it. As you mentioned, Daryl Hannah, is very much about environmental issues and climate change, as Mark Ruffalo is about banning fracking, as Neil Young is about GMOs. I think what we're trying to do is remind everybody that the root of all our problems collectively is corporate money influencing our politics and our politicians in DC. And while they're working on the issues from their end, we're trying to also remind them that this is also the root of the problem. They all know it. It's just that I think they just get kind of, sidelined with the issue on the ground, so to speak.
I don't think that most Americans understand what the issues, the larger issue is. And so what they think they're going to do is they're going to identify a problem, and then they're going to go take the problems to some version of the government and appeal to them to help solve the problem that's been identified. That's not really how that's going to get solved. The problem's much more systemic. It's much broader. And so when you back up and sort of recalibrate your sights, it's kind of the whole system. Well, then how are we going to solve that? That's where we want to be. We want to be asking, how do we solve something when both the left and the right are kind of captured by the same system? And what it does is it makes us stop looking at the system as the solution.
To learn more about Under the Influence and to donate to their current Indiegogo campaign, check out undertheinfluence.com. undertheinfluencefilm.com. It's right there. Now that we've spent some time in the tube, let's head to the front lines to see what's coming up and what's new. This past week, diplomacy actually won, for the time being. Iran has agreed to a deal that would lift sanctions in exchange for reining in any nuclear plans and allowing inspectors in to keep an eye on things. Activist groups such as Code Pink have come out in favor of this deal, seeing it as an important step away from continued and escalated war in the Middle East. Most Americans and Iranians are also in favor of this deal, because war fucking sucks. Sanctions have been a heavy burden for Iranians, and the almost 40-year Cold War between the two nations hasn't done us any favors either. Diplomatic relations with Iran would only help our standing in the Middle East. Our freedom crusades have created more terrorist cells than eating asbestos creates cancer cells. We're tired of war. We the people are so over this bullshit. So then what gives? Is this deal done or what? Well, no, it's not. Congress now has 60 days to vote this deal up or down, and while the majority of Democrats, as in 5-1, support the deal along with several Republicans, it's not a shoo-in. We have to watch out for the deal breakers. That video is actually more of a documentary than a parody. And before you write off these deal breakers as simply psycho contrarians who just want to go against anything that Obama does, consider how many Republicans are pro-TPP, Obama's little pet corporate coup. Now, this isn't about red or blue, left or right aisle. This is about money, about greed. Always follow the money trail. And in this case, it's one hell of a money trail. Former six-term Congressman Jim Slattery recently said that in his 30 years in D.C., he's never seen a foreign policy debate being so immensely affected by the injection of millions of dollars into the American political system. Yep. And those millions of dollars pouring in for just this one issue are primarily coming from pro-Israel and Saudi think tanks and lobbying groups, such as AIPAC, the American Security Initiative, and Secure America Now. These lobbyists are pushing for a veto-proof majority so that Obama won't be able to stop these war hawks from getting more war, more bloodshed, more hate, more greed, and ironically, of course, far less stability and safety both here and in the Middle East. Despite evidence in, the past 14 years of experience, the money keeps pouring in. Sheldon Adelson, a casino magnate, and by the way, that's him smiling, has alone contributed almost $100 million to kill this deal and has publicly spoken out in support of bombing Iran. And it is because of trigger-happy fucksticks like this guy that we can't celebrate quite yet. We have to stay diligent in pushing our members of Congress to vote for the people, not for moneyed interests and sociopathic paranoia. As Medea Benjamin of Code Pink put it in a recent article, Congresspeople face a dilemma. They fear a backlash by the billionaires if they vote for the deal, but most of their constituents support the deal. The pathetic irony is that the Democratic move of giving Congress a say in the Iran deal instead of leaving administration with the authority to seal the agreement, the billionaires have a better shot at drowning out the voices of the American people. To raise your voice and push against the plutocratic asshats, visit codepink.org and stopwarwithiran.com. Also on the front lines this week, don't miss the ALEC protest starting today in San Diego. For more information on that and to plug in for some digital activism wherever you are, check out our segment from last week with Nick Burnaby of the Anti-Media. Also this weekend, and also on the West Coast, I'll be back in LA for an amazing creative activism event combining visual art, poetry, comedy, and music, put on by yours truly and featuring some amazingly politically creative visionaries like Anthony Freda, Lee Camp, Abby Martin, C.S. Stanley, and Keith Ward with Art with Teeth. Tickets are available at the link below, and all proceeds go from the ticket sales go to a local charity that provides youth with free art classes and creative outlets. And that does it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for watching. Please spread and share this with all your friends, foes, and people you don't know. As always, check out the last slide to see all of the sites that I mentioned in the show. There will also be a link to help support Occupy.com and the delicious dissent delivered daily thanks to donations like yours. It is a 501c3, so anything you can contribute is tax deductible and hugely appreciated. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube. From the Devil's Den, good night and act out.